There is a moment in every person's life when they pause, quietly, almost secretly, and wonder if they are becoming someone they were never meant to be. It happens in the spaces between obligations, in the silence after a long day, in the mirror when you're not performing for anyone. In that stillness, something inside whispers, "This isn't who I truly am." And for a brief second, you feel the faint memory of another version of yourself. Lighter, clearer, untouched by the weight you carry today. Most people feel that whisper and quickly drown it out with routine, distraction, or the pressure to fix themselves. But what if you were never broken to begin with? What if the real journey isn't about recreating yourself, but remembering yourself? We live in a world obsessed with change. Reinvent yourself. Upgrade yourself. Become the person you want to be. The world talks about transformation as if who you are right now is somehow unacceptable. And so you chase improvement like a moving target, always trying to achieve some future identity that feels distant and exhausting. But the deeper truth, one that ancient spiritual traditions, modern psychology, and quantum consciousness all point toward, is that real change is not about creating a new self. It's about returning to the self you were meant to be all along. Beneath the layers of doubt, fear, conditioning, and survival, there exists a version of you that has always been whole. A version untouched by insecurity, unburdened by past wounds, unshaken by external noise. That version never disappeared, it simply got covered. Imagine your true self like a bright, unchanging light. Over the years, dust settles on it, expectations, disappointments, judgments, the opinions of others, the roles you learned to play. At some point, the dust becomes so thick that you no longer recognize the light beneath it. You assume the dust is you, and the world encourages the belief. But the light is still there. Transformation begins the moment you stop trying to create a new light and start clearing the dust. The moment you realize that the path forward is not about becoming better, but about becoming real. This shift in perspective matters more than it seems. Many people feel stuck in life not because they lack motivation or discipline, but because the identity they are chasing doesn't belong to them. You can't become someone you were never meant to be. And deep inside, your mind and body know this. That's why forced self-improvement always feels draining. That's why affirmations sometimes feel hollow. That's why you can follow every rule, every habit, every method and still feel disconnected. You're fighting against your own nature. Meanwhile, alignment, true alignment, feels restful, effortless, like falling into a rhythm your soul already understands. There is a reason some memories from childhood feel so vivid. The freedom, the curiosity, the creativity, the sense of being fully alive. Those weren't just moments, they were glimpses of your original blueprint. Over time, as you grew, you began adjusting yourself to be acceptable, successful, safe, or lovable. You learned who you were supposed to be. And in that process you drifted away from who you were. The world saw the version you performed, but not the version you remembered in your most honest moments. And now, as you begin seeking transformation, that buried version is quietly rising again. This script is a journey back to that place. A journey back to you. It's not about quick fixes or surface-level changes. It's about peeling away the layers of false identity you've absorbed. It's about reconnecting with the quiet intelligence inside you, the part that has always known what you're meant to be, even when the rest of you forgot. You're not here to build a new self from scratch. You're here to uncover the one that's been waiting beneath the noise. If you've been feeling lost, confused, or disconnected, it doesn't mean you've failed. It means your soul is tired of pretending. When your inner world becomes uncomfortable, it is often the first sign that you're outgrowing a version of yourself that was never truly yours. That restlessness you feel is not anxiety, it is a calling. A reminder that your story isn't about self-transformation, it's about self-returning. And as you move through this journey, you will notice something beautiful. The more you let go of who you're not, the clearer your real identity becomes. The more you release old beliefs, old roles, old fears, the closer you come to the person you were always meant to be. This is not a process of addition but subtraction. Not improvement but unveiling. Not becoming more but becoming true. So as you listen, allow yourself to soften. Allow your mind to relax its defenses. Allow your heart to remember what it once knew before the world became loud. You are not falling behind. You are not failing to become something great. You are simply on the path of returning to the person you were designed to be. And that journey, unlike any other, is sacred. There comes a point in life when you start believing that something within you is fundamentally wrong. Not because you chose this belief consciously, but because the world repeatedly reflected it back to you in subtle, quiet ways. You begin to think you are too emotional, too sensitive, too confused, too slow, too unsure, too flawed. You start carrying these labels like heavy stones in your pocket, forgetting that none of them originally belonged to you. They were given to you, spoken into you, taught to you. And with time you began treating them as truth. But what if the broken self you believe you are isn't your real self at all? What if that version of you is nothing more than a survival identity, an armor you built to make sense of a world that didn't always know how to hold you? The illusion of the broken self begins early. As children, we understand the world not through logic but through meaning. When someone raises their voice, we don't think they're stressed. We think, I did something wrong. When affection is inconsistent, we don't assume others are emotionally unavailable, we assume we need to earn love. When our dreams, curiosities, or sensitivities are dismissed, we don't question the world, we question ourselves. Slowly we learn to mute the parts of us that feel too risky to show. We shrink the wildness. We quiet the intuition. We hide the creativity. We soften the confidence. And what remains is a version of ourselves modified to survive, not to thrive. But this version, the edited self, the filtered self, is not your truth. It is an adaptation, a response, a mask. And because it was built from fear, it carries the vibration of fear. So as you grow older, you carry this identity into relationships, careers, decisions, and internal battles. You wake up each day trying to fix what you believe is broken, unaware that the thing you're trying to fix is actually a false self. No matter how hard you work, how much you chase validation, how much you try to become better, something inside still feels incomplete. That emptiness is not failure, it is misalignment. The conditioned self was built for one purpose, to keep you safe. It learned how to avoid conflict, how to anticipate rejection, how to stay small enough not to be criticized. It learned how to please people so you wouldn't lose connection. But safety is not the same as authenticity. And protection is not the same as alignment. The survival version of you can help you get through life, but it cannot lead you into your purpose. It was never designed to. If you look closely, you'll notice that the parts of you you call broken are often deeply intelligent. Your anxiety is the part of you that learned to stay alert because once the world felt unpredictable. Your self-doubt is the part of you that learned to question your instincts because someone once convinced you that your inner voice didn't matter. Your overthinking is the part of you that learned to anticipate danger because you didn't always feel emotionally safe. These traits are not defects, they are adaptations created by a younger version of you who was doing their very best with the tools they had. The illusion of the broken self becomes heavy when you forget the origin story. When you begin believing that these adaptations define you instead of protect you. When you forget that beneath the layers of protection, another self exists, quieter, calmer, wiser. The real you. You catch glimpses of this real self in rare moments. When you're alone and feel a sudden wave of clarity. When you're inspired and your soul feels wide and open. When you're honest with yourself in ways you can't be with others. When you act from intuition instead of fear. You may only see flashes, but those flashes are proof that your original self was never lost. Only covered. The world often reinforces the illusion by comparing pain to weakness. You're told to toughen up, move on, stop feeling so much. But heaviness is not a flaw, it is a signal. When you feel disconnected, it's because you've been living far away from your real center. When you feel stuck, it's because you're forcing yourself into an identity that doesn't fit your soul. When you feel unfulfilled, it's because your life is being run by the conditioned self instead of the authentic one. Your emotions aren't failures, they're feedback. The great tragedy is that many people live their entire lives chasing improvement without ever questioning the self they are trying to improve. They keep polishing the armor, unaware that the real transformation begins only when the armor comes off. You cannot heal by fixing the fake self. You heal by unmasking the real one. As you begin this journey inward, something extraordinary starts to happen. You realize that your pain was not a sign of unworthiness, it was a sign of separation from your truth. You realize that the habits you hated in yourself were actually brilliant strategies your younger self created to protect your heart. You realize that your fears were inherited, not chosen. And you begin to see yourself not as broken, but as someone who adapted to survive environments that did not understand your depth. And here is the paradox. The moment you stop trying to fix yourself is the moment you begin to heal. Because healing doesn't come from force, it comes from understanding. The conditioned self softens when it feels safe. The false self dissolves when it is seen with compassion. The survival identity releases when the real self begins to rise. This rising doesn't happen through effort, it happens through remembrance. Not by becoming stronger, but by becoming honest. Not by performing confidence, but by reclaiming your truth. Not by chasing a new identity, but by removing the one that never belonged to you in the first place. As you continue this journey, you will start noticing an inner shift. You will begin hearing your intuition again. You will begin recognizing moments when your fear-filled self is speaking instead of your aligned self. You will begin distinguishing the voice of your wound from the voice of your wisdom. And slowly, gently, the real you will start emerging, not as something new but as something ancient within you finally allowed to breathe. You are not broken. Beneath the layers of fear, doubt, and conditioning, there lies an original blueprint of who you are. This blueprint is not something you create, it is something you uncover. It is the essence of your being, intact, precise, and radiant, waiting quietly for you to remember it. Imagine a river flowing beneath the earth. The surface may be cluttered with rocks, debris, and fallen leaves, but the river itself continues to flow, clear and strong underneath. That river is your true self. The debris represents the adaptations, fears, and misconceptions you have accumulated. Your journey is not about building a river, it is about removing the debris so the water can shine freely again. The original blueprint of your being is not a fantasy or a lofty ideal. It is encoded in your very nature. Your intuition, creativity, empathy, and inner knowing are all signals of this alignment. When you feel drawn to create, when you feel stirred by a sudden insight, when you experience moments of unexplainable joy or clarity, you are touching the edges of this blueprint. These moments are not random, they are reminders of who you are beneath the layers of survival identity. And every time you act from this essence, you reinforce the memory of it, strengthening the connection between the self you have remembered and the self you are living. Many people are unaware of how deeply this blueprint guides them. You may have spent years trying to force yourself into roles, habits, or identities that feel unnatural. You may have followed advice, techniques, or strategies that promise success, love, or fulfillment, only to feel emptier than before. This dissonance exists because you were moving against your natural design. Every time you resist the original blueprint, you experience friction. Every time you force yourself into a mold, you feel a subtle ache, a longing that no external solution can fill. The moment you recognize that the blueprint exists, that it is real, that it is already inside you, the path to alignment begins to open. The process of remembering your original self often begins with noticing the contrast between the constructed self and the innate self. The constructed self seeks approval, avoids discomfort, and acts out of fear. The innate self seeks expression, embraces authenticity, and acts from alignment. The contrast is clear in subtle ways. When the survival self drives decisions, life feels heavy, rigid, and uncertain. When the blueprint guides choices, life feels lighter, inspired, and natural. By observing these differences without judgment, you begin to cultivate awareness, a vital step in reclaiming your essence. Awareness is the bridge between unconscious adaptation and conscious return. Reconnecting with the original blueprint requires more than awareness. It demands curiosity, patience, and courage. Curiosity allows you to explore the parts of yourself that were hidden, dismissed, or silenced. It invites you to ask questions like, who am I when no one is watching? Or, what do I desire that I have been too afraid to acknowledge? Patience allows you to navigate the layers of conditioning without frustration, recognizing that unlearning a lifetime of survival patterns cannot be rushed. Courage allows you to stand in your truth, even when it conflicts with the expectations of others or the habits of your old self. Through these qualities, the blueprint gradually emerges, clearer and more vivid with each conscious step. Metaphor often helps illustrate this process. Imagine your essence as a garden overgrown with weeds. The weeds represent fears, doubts, and outdated beliefs, while the flowers beneath represent your intuition, creativity, and alignment. You did not plant the weeds intentionally, nor are they permanent. By tending the garden, pulling the weeds, nourishing the soil, giving light and space to what is real, you allow the flowers to flourish. The more you nurture what belongs to you, the more effortless life becomes. Alignment is not a struggle. It is a natural unfolding when the environment of your mind and heart is cleared of what no longer serves. Reclaiming your original blueprint also involves embracing contrast. Without understanding the difference between the survival self and the authentic self, the journey can feel abstract. You must see how your reactions, choices, and fears have been conditioned by past experiences. Reflect on moments when you acted out of obligation, avoidance, or fear versus moments when you acted from curiosity, love, or inspiration. The contrast is your guide. It illuminates the path and shows you where the layers of adaptation have accumulated most densely. Recognizing contrast does not create shame, it creates clarity. It allows you to distinguish what belongs to you from what has been borrowed, imposed, or inherited. There is a quantum element to this process as well. Your essence resonates at a frequency that is constant, unchanging, and aligned with the greater field of possibility. When you are disconnected from your blueprint, your energy is scattered, scattered energy creates friction, and life feels unpredictable. When you reconnect with your inner design, your frequency stabilizes, attracting experiences, opportunities, and people that resonate with your true self. Manifestation, creation, and joy flow naturally because they are no longer forced. They are aligned. This is why remembering the original self is not only healing, it is transformative. It is a reclamation of your natural vibrational state. One of the most powerful aspects of remembering your blueprint is the sense of innate guidance that arises. Decisions that once felt difficult now become intuitive. You begin noticing synchronicities and patterns that feel as though the universe itself is responding to your alignment. You trust yourself more because you are no longer following external scripts. You are following the internal map of your design. This guidance is subtle but unmistakable. It appears in the quiet nudges, the inner confirmations, the magnetic pull toward opportunities that nourish your soul. The more you honor this inner navigation, the stronger it becomes. The journey of remembering your original blueprint is also deeply liberating. You realize that perfection was never the goal, achievement was never the path, and validation from others was never required. Your essence is already whole. Your creativity, intuition, and clarity were never lost. They were simply obscured by adaptation. When you reconnect, life begins to feel effortless in a way that is profoundly different from the false ease of avoidance or distraction. There is joy in alignment, a joy that is not conditional, not dependent on outcomes, not attached to results. It is the joy of existing as you were meant to exist. Finally, the act of remembering transforms every aspect of life. Relationships shift because you no longer seek validation from what is not yours. Work and creation shift because you no longer force outcomes that conflict with your inner guidance. Even your internal dialogue changes. You speak to yourself with compassion rather than criticism because you understand that your past adaptations were born out of care, not failure. Remembering your original blueprint is not a one-time event. It is a continuous practice of listening, observing, and allowing the self that has always been true to fully express. And as you do, the alignment between who you are and who you were always meant to be becomes undeniable, radiant, and profoundly freeing. Once you begin remembering your original blueprint, the next step is learning how to live as the aligned version of yourself. This is not a matter of forcing change or striving for perfection. It is a matter of allowing what is already true within you to guide your actions, thoughts, and choices. Alignment is not external. It does not depend on circumstances, approval, or achievement. It is a state of being. When you live from alignment, your life begins to flow effortlessly, because each action, each decision, and each intention resonates with the core of who you are. There is no struggle, only the natural unfolding of your true essence in the world. Living as your aligned self requires a subtle but profound shift in perspective. The conditioned self seeks control, security, and certainty, often reacting to fear and external pressures. The aligned self moves with trust, creativity, and inner authority, acting from clarity rather than obligation. The contrast is palpable. When you follow the old patterns, life feels heavy, repetitive, and draining. When you follow alignment, life feels expansive, inspired, and liberating. The first step is recognizing when the survival self is in control. Awareness becomes the compass that points toward authenticity, allowing you to pause before automatic reactions and choose consciously. This conscious choice often begins with small, deliberate actions. You may start by speaking your truth gently but firmly, setting boundaries that honor your energy, or choosing experiences that feel nourishing rather than obligatory. Each decision may seem minor in isolation, but collectively, they realign your energy and reinforce your connection to your inner blueprint. It is through these repeated acts of conscious alignment that the old, conditioned patterns begin to dissolve. They do not vanish instantly, but they lose their power over you because they are no longer fed by your attention and energy. Releasing what does not serve you is another essential part of this process. The aligned self cannot coexist with habits, relationships, or thought patterns that are rooted in fear, judgment, or resistance. Letting go is not a punishment or denial. It is a natural clearing that allows your true essence to emerge more fully. You may release old beliefs about inadequacy, outdated expectations from family or society, or even identities you once clung to for safety. Each release is an act of self-honoring, a declaration that your life is guided not by the past, but by the intelligence of your own soul. Flow is the hallmark of the aligned self. When you are in alignment, effort feels different. It is no longer pushing against resistance. It is effortless, inspired action. You feel guided by intuition and drawn toward opportunities that resonate with your inner truth. Synchronicities and subtle signs begin to appear, affirming your choices and encouraging deeper trust in your inner guidance. The aligned self does not force reality to conform. It allows reality to respond to the energy and vibration you emit. This is the subtle but profound difference between struggling for life and moving with life. The aligned self also operates with an emotional intelligence that the conditioned self cannot access. You begin to notice when fear, guilt, or insecurity arise, not as your identity, but as signals to return to clarity. You learn to distinguish between the voice of the conditioned mind, which reacts and projects, and the voice of the aligned self, which observes, trusts, and responds with wisdom. This emotional discernment allows you to navigate relationships, work, and personal growth with grace and ease, without being pulled off course by triggers or old patterns. Living in alignment also transforms your relationship with your body and mind. The aligned self honors the rhythms of rest, movement, nourishment, and creativity, rather than forcing them into rigid structures or expectations. You listen to the subtle signals of your body, allowing it to guide your energy rather than override it. Your mind becomes a tool rather than a tyrant, helping you strategize and create while the soul leads the direction. This integration of mind, body, and spirit produces a sense of coherence and peace, a deep knowing that you are exactly where you are meant to be, even amidst uncertainty. Another powerful aspect of alignment is the integration of your past with your present. You no longer resist what you have experienced or feel shame for who you once were. The lessons, challenges, and even mistakes of the past are recognized as necessary for growth, yet they no longer define you. The aligned self is free because it understands that the past was shaping, not imprisoning. You can acknowledge old fears and wounds with compassion, while choosing to move forward from a place of clarity and power. This is not denial, it is transcendence. The aligned self is inherently magnetic. People, opportunities, and experiences begin to gravitate toward you naturally, not because of effort or strategy, but because of the energy you radiate. Authenticity attracts authenticity. Clarity attracts clarity. Joy attracts joy. This is the subtle law of resonance at work. As this journey comes full circle, it becomes clear that the path was never about becoming someone new or chasing a version of yourself that the world would approve of. It was about returning. Returning to the self that has always existed beneath the noise, beneath the expectations, beneath the layers of fear and survival patterns. That self was never lost. It was waiting quietly, patiently, like a seed beneath the soil, intact, whole, and ready to bloom once the conditions were right. And now, as you breathe into this moment, you realize that the conditions have always been within you. The light has always been there, you only needed to clear the dust to see it. This return is not a sudden transformation or a dramatic reinvention. It is subtle, steady, and profound. It happens in moments of stillness when you pause and listen to your inner voice. It happens when you make choices that feel true to your essence rather than convenient for others. It happens when you recognize old patterns without judgment and gently step into alignment. Each conscious step you take is a reclamation, a gentle but powerful affirmation that your life is not about fixing what was never broken, but about uncovering what was always complete. You are not adding to yourself. You are remembering, revealing, and reclaiming. And as you continue this process, a remarkable sense of peace emerges. The need to prove, to struggle, to force outcomes begins to fade. Life starts to flow in harmony with your inner rhythm, and each day becomes an opportunity to express the person you truly are. The anxiety, the restlessness, the sense of being unmoored, these begin to soften because they were never meant to define you. They were signals guiding you back to the truth. Now, when fear or doubt arise, they are no longer masters of your journey. They are reminders, gentle indicators that you are choosing the path of remembrance, alignment, and authenticity. This is the ultimate freedom, the freedom of existing as the self you were always meant to be. It is a freedom that cannot be measured by achievement, recognition, or approval. It is a freedom that lives in the quiet alignment of mind, heart, and spirit. It is the freedom to move through life without carrying the unnecessary weight of misalignment, self-judgment, or borrowed expectations. Every step you take in this state is lighter, more deliberate, and deeply connected to the core of who you are. The world around you responds not because you are performing, but because you are resonating with your truth. As you carry this awareness forward, let it serve as a gentle reminder. Growth is not becoming someone else. Transformation is not about correction. Your journey is one of return. Each choice to honor your intuition, each moment of clarity, each act of courage and self-compassion is a step home. And home, ultimately, has always been within you. The person you are discovering now is not a new creation but a revelation of the one who has been with you all along, waiting for recognition, waiting for your presence, waiting for you to remember that you are whole, complete, and infinitely capable. So breathe deeply. Feel the solidity of your own existence. Trust in your inner guidance. Walk through life with the quiet confidence of one who knows that they are not learning to become themselves, they are remembering themselves. The journey of returning is eternal, yet it is present in every moment. And in this truth, there is profound peace, limitless joy, and the unwavering certainty that the self you are returning to is, and always has been, exactly who you were meant to be.